Jason Kidd was celebrated as a floor general, a leader, a future Hall of Famer. But behind the highlight passes and playoff battles was a story the NBA never wanted center stage. So before we get into it, make sure you like and subscribe, because this is one of those real NBA stories where greatness on the court collided with chaos at home. In 2001, Kidd's private life exploded into public view when he was arrested on domestic abuse charges involving his then-wife, Jumana Kidd, instantly changing how many people looked at the smiling superstar. The arrest wasn't based on rumors or locker room whispers. It was backed by police reports and court records, which made the situation impossible to brush aside as media noise. At the time, Kidd was in the middle of his prime, carrying massive expectations as a franchise leader. Yet suddenly the conversation shifted from his assist numbers to the reality that his personal life was unraveling under serious allegations. Jumana Kidd accused Jason Kidd of physical abuse, and the details that emerged painted a picture far removed from the calm, composed point guard fans saw on television. The case forced Kidd into the legal system, where consequences weren't decided by basketball IQ or clutch performances, but by judges, records, and accountability. The NBA, known for protecting its stars, couldn't fully shield Kidd from the fallout. While he continued to play, the damage to his public image was already done, and the idea of Jason Kidd as just a brilliant basketball mind was permanently complicated by what had happened off the court. The spotlight followed him everywhere, and the silence from the league spoke just as loudly inside the marriage. There was no comeback story. The relationship between Jason and Jumana Kidd never recovered, and the marriage eventually ended in divorce, closing a chapter defined by legal battles, emotional trauma, and public scrutiny. For Jumana, the divorce marked an escape from a painful situation, while for Kidd, it became a stain that followed him long after the case faded from headlines. What makes this story hit harder is how clear and documented it was. This wasn't speculation or gossip passed around years later. It was a real arrest, real reports, and real consequences that unfolded in real time. It exposed the uncomfortable truth that elite talent and personal conduct don't always align. No matter how polished the public image looks, Jason Kidd went on to rebuild his career, becoming a respected veteran and later a coach. But this chapter never fully disappeared. It remains one of the clearest examples in NBA history of how a legend's personal actions can destroy a marriage and permanently alter how greatness is remembered, reminding fans that the darkest moments often happen far away from the court. Kobe Bryant was the ultimate competitor, a global icon built on discipline and obsession with greatness. But in 2003, his legacy was nearly shattered by a scandal that exploded far beyond basketball. So before we go deeper into this story, make sure you like and subscribe, because this is one of the most intense moments where an NBA legend's private life became a worldwide spectacle. A sexual assault case in Colorado pulled Kobe from the hardwood into a legal and media storm that no amount of championships could shield him from. The criminal case eventually had charges dropped, but the situation didn't simply disappear. A civil lawsuit followed, ending in a settlement, and the damage was already done. Kobe stood in front of cameras and admitted to infidelity, a moment that stunned fans and sponsors alike and permanently altered the way the public viewed the face of the Lakers dynasty. For his wife Vanessa, the pressure was unbearable. Every headline, every replay, every late-night debate dragged their marriage into the spotlight. What should have been a private crisis became a national obsession, forcing her to endure scrutiny that came with being married to one of the most famous athletes on the planet. The fallout wasn't just emotional, it was public and relentless. Kobe lost endorsements, faced boos in opposing arenas, and had to answer questions that had nothing to do with basketball night after night. At home, trust was fractured, and the image of the perfect NBA family collapsed in real time. Vanessa eventually filed for divorce, signaling just how deep the damage had gone. It was a breaking point that confirmed the scandal wasn't just a legal issue, but a personal one that had torn through their relationship. Even though the divorce was later called off and the couple reconciled, the scars from that period never truly vanished. What made this chapter so heavy was the scale of it. This wasn't a role player or a forgotten name. This was Kobe Bryant, the face of the NBA, exposed in front of the entire world. The pressure on his family was unlike anything most athletes ever experience, turning their pain into public consumption. Kobe would go on to rebuild his image, win more championships, and reshape his narrative through relentless work and redemption. But this episode remains one of the darkest chapters of his life. It stands as a reminder that even the greatest legends can cause massive emotional fallout at home, and that some battles leave marks no trophy can erase. Magic Johnson was the smiling face of the NBA, the symbol of joy, success, and showtime greatness, but in 1991 that image cracked in a way no one saw coming. So before we go deeper, make sure you like and subscribe, because this is one of the most emotional stories where fame, betrayal, and consequences collided far away from the basketball court. When Magic announced he was HIV positive, the world stopped, and the celebration of his career instantly turned into shock and disbelief. Soon after the announcement, Magic publicly admitted 2 years of infidelity, confirming what many had never imagined about the man seen as a perfect role model. The confession didn't just change the conversation around HIV and the NBA. It exposed the private decisions that had placed his marriage and family in unimaginable danger, turning a personal reckoning into a global moment. For his wife, Cookie Johnson, the pain went far beyond headlines. She was forced to process betrayal, fear, and humiliation all at once, while the entire world watched. In later years, Cookie has spoken openly about how devastating that period was, describing the emotional toll of discovering repeated infidelity while standing beside one of the most famous athletes. Alive. What made this story especially heavy was Cookie's decision to stay. While many expected the marriage to collapse, she chose to support Magic through his diagnosis. Even as she dealt with her own trauma, that choice came at a cost, requiring strength, forgiveness, and resilience few people could manage under such public pressure. The NBA world praised Magic's courage, but behind the praise was a marriage being rebuilt under extreme circumstances. Trust had to be reconstructed, while fear for health and the future loomed constantly, making their relationship a quiet battlefield no cameras could fully capture. Unlike scandals fueled by violence or courtroom drama, this story cut deep because of its humanity. It wasn't about rage or ego, but about betrayal, consequences, and the long road to accountability. Magic's honesty changed public awareness forever, but it also forced his family to live with scars that never fully fade. Today, Magic Johnson is celebrated for survival, advocacy, and legacy. Yet this chapter remains one of the most emotionally impactful marriage stories in NBA history. It stands as a reminder that even the brightest smiles can hide destructive choices, and that the greatest test of strength often happen long after the final buzzer sounds.